topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Hi, this is Shelby Wagner, host of your show, Learning to Dance in the Rain. Happy New Year. Hope you had as good a New Year's Eve as I did. Went dancing with my friends to listen to Johnny Knox as a singer and one-man band, and it was quite interesting and good. Had some good swings music and some good slow ones too. So how are you today? I hope that your second day of January is as good as mine. And I am the author of Learning to Dance in the Rain, a book, award-winning book, which is about surviving grief, learning internet dating, and surviving romance scams. Today's topic is going to be about my second book, actually. It's about scams, and I'm going to try to confront some of these issues with a positive mindset. I have quite a bit of information to give you about scams, and then later I hope to read a story that about what true love really means. So let's get started. What is a scam? What is a scam? Does anybody know? I'm sure you all have your opinions of them, but I have a dictionary definition, which I think is very good. It says a scam is a term that describes any fraudulent business or scheme that takes money or other goods from an unsuspecting person. And a person who does a scam is called a scammer. So we're going to go from that standpoint. Scamming is illegal, and it's very hurtful. If you have a robbery in your house, suppose you've been gone for a party or something, and you come back and your house is ransacked. You got papers thrown everywhere. You know that somebody has been there. Did you cause that to happen? Did you lock your door? You kind of think, well, did I lock my door? Yes, I locked my door. Did I set my security alarm? Well, maybe I didn't have a security alarm, but yeah, if I did, I did. But, or maybe I forgot. Doesn't matter. You're really not to blame that someone entered your home when you weren't there and destroyed property, maybe stole some important things that are important to you. So you're not to blame for that. Well, how is being scammed, a scam victim, different from that? They've stolen your money out of your account. You didn't give them permission to do that. They did it. They manipulated you. Maybe you gave them information that you at the time thought you were giving to a real person from the bank or someone that you loved and you thought that you could trust them, maybe. But if they lied to you, if they misrepresented themselves, they manipulated you, didn't they? Yeah. And so one of the main problems of becoming a victim, yes, you've lost your money. Some people have lost their hearts because romance scammer promised a beautiful relationship in the future, lots of traveling, maybe lots of money. So that vision is gone and your heart is broken. And that is really hurtful in itself. When I was scammed, I didn't really I had not really fallen in love with this person. In fact, by the time he started scamming me and wouldn't leave me alone, I wanted to be rid of him. And I thought if I gave him the money that he'd just leave me alone. But that didn't happen. What happened was I didn't give him enough money. He wanted more. And I couldn't do that. He bothered me. He pestered me for 2-3 weeks before I gave him the first money. This was a romance scammer. And he wore me down. Yeah, he pestered me and wouldn't leave me alone. And I didn't have the money. And yes, all of those excuses. But finally, I just thought, well, maybe he'll leave me alone if I didn't know how to block him on the text messages or the emails or that at the time. And I was sick. So my family were all out having a vacation. They were playing golf and going shopping and doing things. And I had strep throat and I was quarantined in my bedroom. And so when the rest of the family was gone, I'd go down and walk on the beach if I felt like it and do things like that. So I was really alone, and I was lonely and I was sick. And this man told me that he was had been beaten up and his money was stolen in China, and that his passport had been taken by the police because they were doing an investigation into an incident that they thought he was involved with. And so he promised it was a loan and he would be back to Michigan in a week or so, and he would give me my money back at that time. But of course, that didn't happen. And what happens with a lot of scam victims is the guilt. Well, I wish I hadn't given him money. I wish I hadn't done this. I'm to blame. I should have known better. I did know better, but he reached my weak spot. I had denied giving money to a few other scammers, and I had been accused of not being a Christian that I said I was, because I didn't help someone in need. I didn't help the poor. And I said, I help the poor, but I said, I gave my money to Red Cross or to the other churches or things like that. And I know that it was going to do some good. If you want some money, you go to those places and tell them your problems and let them handle giving you money that way. I don't have to send it to you. But anyway, I ended up doing it just to get rid of him. He wanted more money and he bugged me all the way from North Carolina all the way to Michigan, and for 2-3 days in there. And I finally was trying to decide what to do, and it was awful. It was a mess. So, number one, how do you know if you're being scammed? Well, if they ask for money, that's the very first indication. In a romance scam or an imposter scam, or it could be a grandparent scam where they're asking money for your grandson who happened to be arrested in a foreign country or in another state or maybe in the next city, maybe in that city. Have you ever had that happen to you? Yeah. I met a young woman at a conference a year ago, and she thanked me for writing my books, and she said it takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing. And I said, yeah, it does. But she says, my grandmother was a victim of a scammer. She got a call from the police who had said they had arrested my cousin, David, and they needed $2,000 bail to get him out of, let him go out of jail, and he needed to do it right away. Well, she says, I'll have to see what I can do. She hung up the phone, and then she called her daughter, the mother of the boy. And the mother told her, well, Dave's in his room. He's reading. He's not traveling. That's a scam, Grandma. Just forget about it. So, she could have just sent him a check for $2,000, and she would have been out that money. Fooled once, fooled twice. I don't know, but it's a very hard decision. So, how do you know if you're being scammed? Well, that's the first one. If it's an imposter and they're asking for money, then you can be pretty sure that that's what it is. If you go any farther and they want it to be sent to them by wire transfer, used to be back when I was scammed, that was one of the options. But today it's gift cards, it's Bitcoins or other cryptocurrency. If they ask for those, forget it, hang up and block them and don't go any further. Because if you give in to them, I learned that your name goes on a suckers list. Well, that doesn't make me feel very good. I don't know how it makes you feel, but it doesn't make me feel any very good to think about myself as a sucker. But I guess I was, because I did send him some money. And it's kind of like a telemarketer, actually, a list. You buy something one place, and the next thing you know, you got somebody else calling you wanting it. So we really have to be careful and watchful. We have to be careful what we say on social media. I have seen friends of mine saying, oh, we are currently at the Red Lobster maybe in Grand Rapids, and we're having a really good time. Well, if an unscrupulous person happens to look at your Facebook page and see that, and they know, they can look in the phone book or someplace where you live, and who knows, maybe when you get home, your house has been ransacked. In that case, maybe you were to blame, but not really, because scammers play on our emotions, our vulnerabilities. If we're lonely, that's where the romance scammers really work on you. They give you the encouragement and attention that we think we need. And
You have a question.
okay, I'll just stop for a moment. I have a question, so go ahead.
How long were you in a romance scam before they asked for money?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear all of that. Would you repeat it?
How long were you in a romance scam before they asked for money?
All right. Would you like to tell me more about it?
No, the question was asking you how long were you in the romance scam before they asked you for money?
Oh, how long was I in it? Okay. Well, I was in Tennessee packing up my house. I had just sold it down there, and I was finishing up that. And I noticed that this fellow was from a city not about 10 miles from where I was living with my daughter. And I thought, well, I needed a friend. So I responded, and we chatted. When he was going out of town, he was a businessman. He was going to China. That's what he said, to finish up his last call. So I guess I chatted with him once before I left for Tennessee, and he left for China, supposedly. When I got down to Tennessee and I was packing up, the phone texted me, and I got a text from somebody, and I went to see, and he said he had arrived in China, and he was safe, and it was everything was good. So that of course, made me feel better. I had been alone in my house there, packing up and missing my husband, who had died maybe 6 months before. And so I chatted with him then, and then I chatted about 2 weeks. It was about 2 weeks, I guess. We texted back and forth, and then I received a message that he was in trouble, and would I loan him $20,000? Well, number one, I didn't think he needed $20,000 to get this problem solved and get back to the States, as he said. And I didn't have, I mean, I wasn't about to give somebody that kind of money. I was buying a new house and moving and everything. I needed my money. That was what I really needed. So no, I am sorry, I can't. Well, then several times a day he would text me. He needed the money. He needed the money. He wanted me to wire it to him at that time. This was 3-4 years ago. And so I kept saying no, and I stopped answering. I didn't know how to block him, and that's what I wish I had done, because I wouldn't have given him. So yeah, in this particular case, I think it was 2 weeks before he asked me for money. But I've had others ask me for money within 2-3 days. Yeah, and I've always said no, and I learned to block them on my phone, and I don't go back there. Don't talk to them. Don't listen to them. Some take longer. I have a friend I met. There's one of those ladies that runs a store downtown. She said her daughter had dated this man she met online for 4 years and did not realize that he was a scammer. They got married. And then she noticed that her savings account had started to be drained, and he hadn't asked her for permission to take her money out of her savings account. 4 years, she knew this man, she loved him, and he did this. So it can take any time, but when they ask for money, it's better if you just hang up and say no and stick to it, and don't let them talk you into it. If you keep talking to them, they will manipulate you into doing it. I know from experience. Do you have any other questions? I'm sorry this happened to you. Did you report it, or are you talking to someone now? Or are you still there?
The caller would have to call back and ask the question.
Okay. Well, it could, yeah, anytime that they are asking for money, that's the first clue. If you're on a dating site, there are several clues ahead of time. And in my book, Learning to Dance in the Rain, I give 38 red flags that tell you or make you doubt that they're really true. And the money one, I know right away, I'm going to tell you, hang up, block them, say no, and don't go back to them, because they will manipulate you further. They'll make you feel bad. You're not a Christian. Oh, well, you didn't really love me anyway. You were just leading me on, and all this stuff that, narcissists do. It's not your fault if you fall for them. You've been manipulated into that. So that's one of the problems with psychological problems that is involved with becoming a victim. And because you feel awful. You feel like it was your fault. Why did I do that? I'm not that dumb. Why did I do that? And then your friends, when they find out about it, is, well, I just don't understand how anybody could fall for something like that. And I'm thinking, you're looking at her. You're looking at one of them, Why are you saying that to me? Because I did. And I just respond back and say, because they took advantage of the fact that I was lonely and that I wanted to be loved by someone. I wanted to fall in love again. And that experience. And, I didn't fall in love with this guy. I was sick and really not thinking about how far the relationship might go. But I was lucky in that respect that I didn't, but I still was very emotionally upset by the whole thing. When I got home, when I drove from Myrtle Beach, vacation with my family, back to my house in Tennessee and finished up what I had to do there for the sale of my house. And then I drove 9 hours to Michigan, where I was living with my daughter. And I just thought when I fell for the romance scam, I just felt I'm not going to tell anybody I did this. I'll get my money back, and nobody will know that I helped this man. And that's what I thought. But when he bothered me on all the way home, that my text was going off every half hour, every 15 minutes sometimes, and I'd look at it and it was him, and I would not answer. But I thought, oh my. So I don't know why I did this, but I drove off of the expressway and to this little town that had a branch of my bank, and I decided I would send him some more money. And that story, oh my, that story is in my book, Learning to Dance in the Rain. I felt like I was a criminal. They gave me the money in my bank, and I drove to the second bank to deposit it in the account that the scammer had told me to deposit in. When I got there, they said, we declined the deposit, Mrs. Wagner. We can't accept it. So I said, well, what's the matter? Why? It's the cash I had for them. Well, your bank called and they want you to come back. They want to talk to you some more. And I put everything back in my purse and I walked out of the bank. I was so tired. I had already driven 8 hours in my car all by myself, and I had another 2 hours to go. I just wanted to get back to Michigan. And so I got in my car and I was tempted to just keep driving back to the expressway. But when I got to the bank parking lot, I pulled in there. I got out of the car and I went into the bank. And all of a sudden, I had two women, one on each side of me. And one of them said, Miss Wagner, please come with us. We're going into a room in the back. And I looked at them and I looked at mine, and flashes of a movie where the two police officers escort the person they think is guilty and handcuffed into the police department or the jail or whatever. And I think, oh my gosh, good cop, bad cop, right? And that's on my mind. And what did I do? I'm trying to give my money to this person to help him and get him out of quit bothering me. But you know what? In my book, I tell more a little about that and that's how I felt about it. And when I was talking with my daughter a couple of years later, I had totally forgotten about that bank incident. I had totally wiped it out of it was such a bad memory. So I said, well, tell me what happened. I forgot. And so she went through the story again and told me. And I said, I did that? And she said, yes, you did, Mom. But I said, well, I was so mad because the bank put a hold on my account and wouldn't let me get any money out of it. And she said, but Mom, they kept you. They saved your money for you. You did not give them the rest of the money that you thought you might give to them to get rid of them. So that put a brand new perspective on my whole story. And I thought, yeah, you're right. They did help me. So I thank the PNC Bank for having that fraud department and for embarrassing me, I guess you could say. But when she told me, I sat down at the desk and she was writing and she was writing and she wasn't talking to me. And I thought, oh boy. Finally, she looked up and she said, Ms. Wagner, we think you have being scammed. And inside of me, I felt a rush that said, thank God. Somebody knows what's happening to me. But pardon me, you see how emotional the whole thing is to the victim. That was 5 years ago, 6 years ago almost, and 17. And it still hurts. So be gentle and try not to tell a victim, oh, I don't understand how anybody could fall for that kind of thing. That's my beg to you. We're vulnerable, all of us. We're especially widows and widowers who are alone for the first time in my life since I was 23, as almost well over 50 years. So yeah, I was vulnerable. My kids knew it. They didn't want me to do internet dating, but I was stubborn and I didn't listen to them. I did it anyway. I did it my way, as Frank Sinatra said it. And our way is not always the best way. So I suggest you share with your an advisor, someone you've known a long time, someone that you trust with your information, somebody that you can talk to, somebody that will listen. And it's certainly not somebody on the other side of your screen that you have never met, because you don't know them. I don't care how long you've talked to them. You don't know them. You don't know if they're telling you the truth, and you don't know if they are who they say they are. Scammers will, on the internet, there are a lot of different things. On the romance scams, on the dating sites, and social media. I met one guy on Facebook. He wanted to be friends, and I clicked on it and accepted it. And we got to talking, and oh my goodness, he was that picture was the most good-looking man I'd ever seen. And we got along so well, and I gave him my phone number so we could text, and my email. And he was part of an oil rig scam. He was an engineer out in the ocean, and oh boy, that's not the one I sent the money to. But this one, I did fall for this one, and I don't know why, other than that he was so good looking and he was so encouraging and giving me a lot of attention. And so, yeah, I was foolish, I guess. When my daughter and son-in-law discovered my scam with the guy visiting in China, after we got through discussing that problem and what we were going to do about it, which we did. We went to the police, we went back to the bank, and those stories are in my book. But they said, are there any other guys that you're talking to on it? And I said, yeah, there are a couple of others. So here I am, I'm living in their house, and she says, well, Mom, you're grounded. 2 weeks, no computer, no internet. And what? And she says, it's my house, it's my internet, and you're grounded. No internet for 2 weeks. Well, that was very hard for me, but I got through it all right. And it was good. My daughter and I, we have a good relationship. I was real happy last week when she allowed my grandson to sing for us. And then later she called back and told me her fondest or one of her memorable Christmases. And I really love my children. I have a son and I have a daughter. And I can't believe it, but golly, they're in their 40s. And wow, I can't believe time has gone by so fast. All right, so what kind of scams are there? Well, in my book, Scams, I have I'm listed about 150 different scams that are out there. And I give tips on how to avoid becoming a scam victim. And I've dedicated this book to the veterans because I learned while I was writing it that from the AARP and the U.S. Post Office that veterans are targeted very heavily, and they become victims of scammers first. And I think, and the reason is that these people wear uniforms. They pretend to be commanders or generals or captains or whatever. And our veterans are taught to take orders and do what they're told to by these people. And so I want to tell them to be careful. Not everybody that's wearing a uniform is really an officer in the U.S. military. So check things out. How do you check things out? Well, if someone calls you and says they're from your bank, for example, and your accounts are being looked over or manipulated or changed or something, and they said, well, you can check this out by calling us at this number. Don't call them at that number. Hang up. Call them from a number that you know is the real number of that bank or that financial advisor or wherever you have your investments. Call them personally and ask them, I got this letter or this call or this email from you, it looks like, and it wants to do such and such. Is this really you? And they will tell you, no, we do not do business that way. And then you know that you just avoided losing money, losing your identity, maybe. So be careful when somebody offers you a really good deal or they want a relationship with you. Think twice. There was email, was a post on one of the social medias about this guy. The woman met the guy online, and then they set a date and they met them. And then, of course, you're going to tell him you have a family. And she talked about her daughter and what school, I don't know, and innocently telling him more information than he needed to know. And so the next day she dropped her kindergartner daughter off at school. And when she went to pick her up, the daughter was not there. And a man came and said he was her father and picked her up. Well, guess what? Was kidnapped. And that's a whole another subject that I don't even really want to think about, but it's there. So anyway, call your institutions before you give some money. If it's a romance scammer, call and talk to a friend and say, what do you think? Should I send him some money? And they have not had that contact with that person, so they're not emotionally involved. But it's better to think, no, I'm not going to do that, than it is to just send them money. And don't change your mind. Say no. hang up and don't talk to them anymore. Like I said in my book, Learning to Dance in the Rain, there are 38 other red flags. And I say, well, most of them, if you find 2 or 3, then that's probably proof enough. But anyway, that's another story. Also, it's urgency as a clue. If they, oh, we need it today or we need it tomorrow. And that's, it's, he's dying. You need to have the money right away. Well, that's a pretty good clue that it's a scam. Another one is don't tell anybody. Don't, keep this, I'm your secret friend. Another one is they send money, they request some money through wire transfers. Walmart does that. Not that they're to blame or money card. They aren't. And they asked me, do you know this person? And yes. Gift cards, though, if they want you to send them money in a gift card, that is a big clue. And then now they go to the cryptocurrencies. And that's another type of scam. Oh my gosh. That's another issue. And I'm sorry that I know quite a bit about that one also, because I'm a victim of that. I spent a lot of money. With the scammer, the first one, and I had hoped to get some money back. And another person took advantage of that desire. Found that was where I was vulnerable, suggested I get involved with investing money in this cryptocurrency investment company. So we'll talk about that one another day. I want to end this one on a positive note. I hope I have time to read this. My pastor read it yesterday in church. I see that she put up my certificate about Frankfurt, Germany. My book was with the Regency Publisher display at the fair in Frankfurt, Germany in October. And my salesperson was there. She was very excited. It created a lot of buzz at the show, and people, she said the producers there were producers and bookstore owners and librarians and that, but they would see the name of Learning to Dance in the Rain. Oh, gee, this is about dancing. Well, I'm sorry. It's not about dancing, really. Dancing is what I did to help me get through my tough times. And I learned to line dance, and now I'm learning to ballroom dance, and I love to dance. But I also learned to play euchre, and I like to play euchre, and I like to play hand and foot, which is a canasta, a form of canasta. And so I say learning to dance. Dance is whatever activity you choose to do, you like to do, that helps you to laugh instead of cry, helps you to have fun again. And that's what we want to do, is we want to deal with our troubles, our difficult times, and get through it, and then put it in the past and go on to life enjoyment. Do I have time to read this
Yes.
story? It takes about 8 minutes. I could shorten it. How much time would we have?
You have time.
Okay. So it's called The Gift of the Magi. But I think it's a reflection on love. And I'll just say in my book, Learning to Dance in the Rain, love does not happen when you start talking to somebody online. And if they tell you they love you within a couple, 3 days, in my book, I tell you right away, love doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen, especially when you have not met somebody. So don't let them convince you that they love you. If they say they love you and I want money, for sure. Anyway, I want to talk about the gift of the Magi, and you can show any picture that you want to. It doesn't matter. Just don't show me. $1.87. That was all. She had put it aside 1 cent at a time, and then another, and carefully counted it. And she was careful. She had bought her meat and her other food. But this time she had $1.87. And tomorrow was going to be Christmas. There was nothing to do but fall on the bed and cry. And so that is what Della did. While the lady of the home was slowly doing that, let's take a look at her home. Furnished rooms at this time cost about $8 a week. There's a little more to say about that. In the hall below was a letter box, too small to hold a letter. There was no electric bill, there was an electric bell, but it could not make a sound. And there was a title, a name beside the door, Mr. James Dillingham Young. When the name had been placed there, Mr. James Dillingham Young was being paid $30 a week. But now he was only getting $20 a week, and this name seemed too long and important. Perhaps it should have just been James D. Young. But when Mr. James Dillingham Young entered the furnished room, his name became very short indeed. Mrs. James Dillingham Young put her arms around him and called him Jim. You've already met his wife, Della. Della finished her crying and heard the marks of it from her face, cleaned the marks from her face. She stood by the window and looked out with no interest. Tomorrow would be Christmas Day, and she only had $1.87 to buy Jim a gift. She had put aside as much as she could for months, but this was all she had left. $20 a week is not much. Everything had cost more than she'd expected. It always happened like that. Only $1.87 to buy Jim a gift, her Jim. She'd had many happy hours planning something nice for him, something nearly good enough, something almost worth the honor of belonging to Jim. There was a looking glass between the windows of the room. Perhaps you've seen the kind of looking glass that is placed in an $8 furnished room. It was very narrow. A person could see only a little bit of himself at a time. However, if he was very thin and moved very quickly, he might be able to get a good view of himself. And Della was quite thin, and so she had mastered this art. Suddenly, she turned from the window and stood before the glass. Her eyes were shining brightly, but her face had lost its color. Quickly, she pulled down her hair and let it fall to its complete length. The James Dillingham Youngs were very proud of two things which they owned. One thing was Jim's gold watch. It had once belonged to his father, and long ago, before that, it had belonged to his father's father. The other important thing was Della's hair. If a queen had lived in the rooms near theirs, Della would have washed and dried her hair where the queen could see it. Della knew her hair was more beautiful than any queen's jewels and gifts. If a king had lived in the same house with all his riches, Jim would have looked at his watch every time they met. Jim knew that no king had anything as valuable as his watch. So now Della's beautiful hair fell about her, shining like a falling stream of brown water. It reached below her knee. It almost made itself into a dress around her. And then she put it up on her head again, nervously and quickly. Once she stopped for a moment and stood still, while a tear or two ran down her face. She put on her old brown coat and her old brown hat, and with the bright light still in her eyes, she moved quickly out the door and down the street. She stopped at a sign that said Mrs. Sofroni, hair articles of all kinds. Up to the second floor, Della ran and stopped to get her breath. Mrs. Sofroni, large, too white, cold-eyed, looked at her. Will you buy my hair? Asked Della. I buy hair, said Mrs. Sofroni. Take your hat off and let me look at it. Down fell the brown waterfall. $20, said Mrs. Sofroni, lifting the hair to feel the weight. Give it to me quick, said Della. Oh, and the next 2 hours seemed to fly by. She was going from one shop to another to find a gift for Jim. She found one at last. It surely had been made for Jim and no one else. There was no other like it in any of the shops, and she had looked in every shop in the city. It was a gold watch chain, very simply made. Its value was in its rich and pure material. Because it was so plain and simple, You knew that it was very valuable. All good things are like this. And it was good enough for the watch. As soon as she saw it, she knew Jim must have it. It was like him, quiet and value. Jim and the chain both had quietness and value. She paid $21 for it and hurried home with the chain and 87 cents. With that chain on his watch, Jim could look at his watch and learn the time anywhere he might be. Though the watch was so fine, it had never had a fine chain. He sometimes took it out of his pocket and looked at it only when no one else could see him do it. When Della arrived home, her mind quieted a little. She began to think more reasonably. She started to try to cover the sad marks of what she had done. Love and large-hearted giving, when added together, can have deep marks. It is never easy to cover these marks, dear friends. Never easy. Within 40 minutes, her head looked a little better with her short hair. She looked wonderfully like a schoolboy. She looked at the looking glass for a long time. If Jim doesn't kill me, she said to herself, before he looks at me a second time, he'll say I look like a girl who sings and dances for money. Oh, but what could I do? Oh, what could I do with $1.87? At 7, Jim's dinner was ready for him, and Jim was never late. Della held the watch chain in her hand and sat near the door where he always entered. Then she heard his step in the hallway, and her face lost color for a moment. Then she heard his step in the hall, and her face sorry about that. She often said little prayers quietly about simple everyday things, and right now she said, please, God, please make him think I'm still pretty. The door opened and Jim stepped in. He looked very thin and he was not smiling. Poor fellow, he was only 22 and with a family to take care of. He needed a new coat and he had nothing to cover his cold hands. But Jim stopped just inside the door. He was as quiet as a hunting dog when it is near a bird. His eyes looked strangely at Della, and there was an expression in them that she could not understand. It filled her with fear. It wasn't anger, nor surprise, nor anything she had been ready for. He simply looked at her with that strange expression on his face, and Della went to him. Jim, dear, she cried, don't look at me like that. I had my hair cut off and I sold it. I couldn't live through Christmas without giving you a gift. My hair will grow again. You won't care, will you? My hair grows very fast. It's Christmas, Jim. Let's be happy. You don't know what a beautiful, nice gift I bought for you. You've cut your hair? Asked Jim slowly. He seemed to labor to understand what had happened. He seemed not to feel sure he knew. Cut it off and sold it, said Della. Don't you like me now? I'm me, Jim. I'm still the same person without my hair. Jim looked around the room. You say your hair is gone, he said. You don't have to look for it, said Della. It's sold. I tell you, I sold it, and it's gone. It's the night before Christmas, boy. Be good to me, because I sold it for you. Maybe the hairs of my head could be counted, she said, but no one could ever count my love for you. Let's eat dinner, Jim. Jim put his arms around his Della, and for 10 seconds he looked in a different direction. $8 a week or $1 million a year. How different are they? Someone may give you an answer, but it will be wrong. The Magi brought valuable gifts, but that was not among them. My meaning will be explained soon. From inside his coat, Jim took something tied in a paper, and he threw it on the table. I want you to understand me, Dell, he said. Nothing like a haircut could make me love you less. But if you'll open that, you may know why I felt when I came in. Della's white fingers pulled off the paper, and then a cry of joy and then a change to tears. For in the present paper was a comb, 2 combs. The combs Adela had seen in a shop window and loved for a long time. Beautiful combs with jewels, perfect for her beautiful hair. She had known they cost too much for her to buy them, and now they were hers. But her hair was gone. She held them to her heart and at last was able to look up and say, "My hair grows fast, Jim." And then she jumped up and cried, "Oh, oh." Jim had not yet seen his beautiful gift. She held it out to him in her open hand. The gold seemed to shine and softly, as if with her own warm and loving spirit. "Isn't it perfect, Jim? I hunted all over town to find it. You'll have to look at your watch 100 times a day now. Give me your watch. I want to see how they look together." Jim sat down and he smiled. "Della," he said, "let's put our Christmas gifts away and keep them a while. They're too nice to use now. I sold the watch to get the money to buy the combs. And now I think we should have our dinner." Well, I made it through without crying, but isn't that beautiful and sad? But here's a couple that did a very meaningful thing because of their love for each other. So I'm touched by it, and I hope you are too. And I'm going to say goodbye now. Have a very good week, and I hope to see you next week. We'll talk more, maybe about love. Thank you. Bye now.